Imagine giving your heart, your time, and every bit of strength you have to raise a child. You watch her take her first steps, you stay up all night when she's sick, you work extra hours to pay for her school, and you never complain, and because she's your whole world. And then one day, when life gets heavy and you need her, she turns her back. That's exactly what happened to me. I never thought I'd be the kind of mother begging her own child for help. But when my body gave up on me, when I couldn't stand, couldn't cook, couldn't even keep food down, I did what any parent would do. I called my daughter, and she said to me, calmly, like we were discussing the weather, "I can't, Mom. I have my own life now." Those words burned a hole in me. It wasn't just what she said. It was how easily she said it, like I wasn't the same woman who had given up everything so she could have a future. That night, as I lay in bed alone, listening to my own heartbeat echo through the silence of my little house, I realized something. The people you think you can count on are not always the ones who'll stand beside you when the storm comes. And that realization changed everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, may I ask a small favor? Please consider subscribing. It helps this channel grow. It encourages me to keep sharing real stories like this, and honestly, it means the world to me. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's a reminder. Sometimes the greatest betrayal comes from the ones you love most. And sometimes, the quietest revenge is the one they never see coming. Before everything fell apart, my life was simple, peaceful even. I'd been retired for almost 8 years, a school teacher for most of my life. Not a fancy job, but one that filled my heart. I taught children how to read, how to write, how to think kindly about each other. My husband, Daniel, passed away 7 years ago. We'd had 32 years together. We built our life brick by brick. Not just the house we lived in, but the memories, the lessons, the kind of quiet joy you can't buy. When he died, I leaned on our daughter, Claire, our only child, my whole world in one person. I told myself, at least I still have her. I used to watch her laugh at something on her phone, her eyes glowing like they did when she was little, and I'd feel this weight lift from my chest. She gave me purpose after Daniel was gone. Claire was bright, ambitious, always on the move. Big job in the city, always chasing the next promotion, always in a hurry. I admired her for it. I wanted her to have everything I didn't. I kept my life small, so hers could be big. I sold my car when I stopped driving so she'd have a down payment for hers. I paid off her last bit of student debt with what little Daniel left in savings. I didn't keep score. That's what parents do. You pour from your cup even when it's almost empty because love doesn't measure. And for a long time, I believed we understood each other, that the love between us ran both ways. But you never really know the depth of someone's heart until you need them. It started small. I noticed she'd answer my calls less. She'd send a text instead of visiting. Birthdays were FaceTimes instead of hugs. I told myself it was just the way life is now. Busy, digital, always moving. I swallowed the ache and told her I understood. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late. My chest felt tight. I couldn't keep food down. My hands trembled like they belonged to someone else. I knew something wasn't right. I'd always been strong, the kind of woman who could shovel snow in the morning and bake bread by noon. But that night, I couldn't even get out of bed. I dialed Claire, not the ambulance, not the neighbor. My daughter. She picked up. Her voice was bright, distracted, probably mid-conversation with someone else. I told her I wasn't well, that I needed her, that I was scared. There was a pause, a long one. Then she said, "Mom, I can't drop everything. I have a meeting tomorrow. I have my own life now. Please don't make me feel guilty for that." My ears rang. I tried to speak, but no sound came. I just listened as the space between us stretched into something I didn't recognize. I hung up, lying there in the dark, whispering her name like maybe if I said it enough times, she'd appear. But no one came. And I cried, not because of the illness, but because of the loneliness. Because in that moment, I felt like I didn't matter to the very person I had built my life around. By morning, my neighbor Anna had noticed something was wrong. She knocked, gently at first, then harder when I didn't answer right away. She found me pale, weak, embarrassed to even be seen like that. And without a single question, she made me tea. Warm, sweet, comforting. She stayed with me that whole day, called her son to bring groceries, checked my temperature every hour, sat with me through the night when my breathing grew shallow. We weren't close before, just polite waves over the fence, a shared smile on trash day. But kindness has a way of moving faster than blood sometimes. And as Anna sat beside me, whispering, "You'll be okay, I'm here," I realized something painful, but freeing. Family isn't always the people you share a name with. Sometimes it's the ones who show up when the others don't. Claire didn't call back for 2 days, 2 whole days. When she did, it wasn't to ask how I was. It was to remind me she was swamped with work and that I should try to get someone else to check in. Like I was a package needing a signature, not a mother who had held her hand through every fever, every heartbreak, every childhood nightmare. Something inside me cracked, not loud, not angry, quiet, cold, final. I told her I understood. I said, "Of course, honey, don't worry about me, focus on work." But inside, I was already somewhere else, already thinking, already planning, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Out of the aching realization that if I wanted dignity in my final chapters, I'd have to write them myself. That was the day I stopped waiting for my daughter to act like one, and that was the day the plan began to take shape, slowly, quietly, like a storm forming over still water. The days that followed were quiet and strangely calm. My body was still weak. My head would spin when I stood up too fast. The doctor said I'd had what they call a mild event, not a full stroke, but my body's way of warning me that I'd pushed too hard, ignored too many signs. But Anna never left. She came every morning, carrying a little paper bag from her bakery, soft bread, still warm from the oven, a jar of honey, sometimes a piece of fruit sliced and wrapped like it was a gift. She'd sit at my kitchen table, always with that same gentle voice, not asking for anything, not rushing, just present. "How's your breathing today?" she'd ask, handing me a mug of chamomile tea. "A little better," I'd whisper, my throat dry. She'd smile like that answer mattered, like my improvement was a little victory we were sharing together. One afternoon when the sun came through the blinds just right, painting the kitchen in stripes of gold, I asked her why she was doing this. Why all this kindness? We've hardly spoken before. She shrugged, wiping her hands on a little towel she always carried. Because when my husband passed, the world got very small and very quiet. A neighbor, a stranger really, came by every day for 2 weeks, checked on me, brought soup. Sometimes we just sat in silence. It kept me alive. Now it's my turn to return that kind of grace. I sat there, blinking back tears I didn't expect. I hadn't cried in days, not since that phone call with Claire. But hearing Anna's story cracked something open in me. "Most people don't care anymore," I said softly. She reached across the table, resting her hand gently on mine. "Some do," she said. "And those are the ones who matter." That night, lying in bed, I thought about the contrast. How my own flesh and blood could disappear when I needed her most, while someone who owed me nothing gave me everything I needed to feel human again. It wasn't just the tea, or the bread, or the medicine reminders. It was the seeing. Anna saw me, not as a burden, not as a list of symptoms, as a person. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, strength returned. The color came back to my face. I could stand longer, walk farther. I even began to feel hunger again, a sign the doctor said that my body was healing, and through all of it, Anna was there. One morning, she insisted on taking me out for fresh air. We walked slowly down the block, She kept an arm looped gently through mine, steady and warm. The world felt alive again. The smell of wet pavement after a night's rain, the sound of kids laughing in a yard, the quiet rhythm of my own steps reminding me I wasn't done yet. At the end of the street, we sat on a little bench just watching the day unfold. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "What?" "Life," she said. "Still happening. Still beautiful." I smiled for the first time in weeks. A real smile, the kind that starts in the chest before it reaches the lips. Meanwhile, Claire's calls grew shorter, further apart. She texted once, "Hope you're better, busy quarter, love you." 3 words, "love you," typed without weight, without warmth, like signing off an email. And with every silent day that passed, I understood more and more that blood might tie us, but choice defines us. I started noticing small things Anna did that told me who she really was. She'd tuck a blanket around me before leaving, but only after she was sure I wouldn't protest. She refilled my pillbox without mentioning it. She wrote her phone number in big letters on the fridge, with call anytime underlined twice. There's a quiet kind of goodness that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say, "Look at me, see how kind I am." It just is. And the more I saw it in Anna, the more I felt a shift in myself. A small, steady flame of gratitude. And something else. Resolve. Not revenge yet. That word would come later. But resolve to stop letting people, even people I loved, treat me like I was optional. Anna reminded me what dignity feels like, what care looks like without guilt attached. And as the days turned into almost a month, I started looking at my life with new eyes. Not at what I'd lost, a husband, a daughter's loyalty, years of quiet sacrifices, but at what I still had. The ability to make choices, to decide who would stand beside me when the world turned cold. One evening, Anna lingered at the door after bringing me supper. "You're getting stronger," she said with a smile. "I feel like I am," I admitted. She hesitated, then added, "Claire hasn't been by?" I shook my head. "Not once." She nodded, eyes soft, like she'd already guessed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said something I hadn't planned to. "You've been more of a daughter to me these past few weeks than my own has in years." Her eyes filled instantly. She stepped forward, hugged me, not polite, not cautious, just warm and honest. "You deserve to feel cared for," she whispered. And in that moment, a part of me that had been cold since Claire's words started to thaw. I didn't know it yet, not fully, but that was the night everything in my life began to quietly shift. Because kindness like that doesn't just heal, it clarifies. It makes you see who's really in your corner and who's just passing through. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped feeling powerless. I started to feel like a woman with decisions left to make. Recovery is a strange thing. It doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days you wake up and feel almost like yourself again. Lighter, stronger, hopeful. And then the next morning, you open your eyes and feel every ache, every weakness, like a reminder that you're still not who you used to be. But even in that uneven climb back to health, something unexpected was happening to me. My mind was waking up. At first, it was little things. I started rearranging the pills in my weekly box, double-checking dates on my paperwork, cleaning out drawers I hadn't touched in years. Then it grew bigger. I opened my bank statements, sorted old letters, reread my husband's will. Not because anything was wrong, but because suddenly I felt like I needed to see everything clearly. When life strips you down to the softest, most vulnerable part of yourself, it gives you a kind of clarity you didn't know you were capable of. And that's what happened. I began to see my life like a house full of rooms, some full of light, some locked, some neglected, some in need of cleaning. And standing at the center of it all was a simple, painful truth. I had given so much of myself to people who could not or would not give back. Claire's absence was no longer just an injury. It was evidence. It told a story louder than words. That when I became inconvenient, I became invisible. And that story needed an ending. One evening, after Anna had dropped off dinner and the house was quiet again, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper and a pen. The moonlight came through the window, soft and silver, laying a quiet glow over everything. I wrote down 3 questions. Who has truly been there for me? Who has treated me with care, not out of obligation, but out of heart? Who would I want to feel my gratitude when I no longer can speak it? I stared at those questions for a long time, and then, without even thinking, my hand began to move. I wrote Anna's name, not Claire's, not any distant cousin, not a family friend from church, not a single relative who had sent a polite text but never shown up. Just Anna. The pen didn't shake. The letters didn't hesitate. My body, weak only days ago, felt certain, steady. I spent the next few weeks quietly putting things in order. I called my lawyer. Not the family lawyer Claire had insisted I keep, but the one my late husband had trusted. He still kept an office above the post office downtown, quiet, private. He listened without interrupting as I explained what I wanted. Not revenge, not punishment, just truth reflected on paper. "You're sure?" he asked softly. "I've never been more sure," I said. He nodded, adjusted his glasses, and began making notes. At home, I started going through the house, the furniture, the photo albums, the heirlooms that had been passed down through generations. I touched each one like a memory, not like a possession. And I thought about what each of them meant, and who would value them not for their worth, but for the story behind them. I found the old rocking chair my husband had built when Claire was born, the one we used to sit in late at night when she wouldn't stop crying. I sat in it for a while, rocking gently, remembering the smell of baby powder, the sound of her tiny breaths, and I cried, not because I was angry, but because I was letting go. Not of love. You don't stop loving your child, not really, but of the expectation that love would be returned in kind. That night, Anna stopped by again, this time with soup, homemade chicken noodle, rich and fragrant, the kind you could smell from the hallway before she even knocked. She found me sitting in the rocking chair, tears drying on my cheeks. "Are you all right?" she asked gently, setting the soup down, not crowding, just waiting. I smiled, a tired but real smile. "I'm better," I said. "More than better, I feel awake." She tilted her head, curious but respectful. "Awake to what?" I took a deep breath, eyes on the floorboards that had carried so many footsteps of a life fully lived. "To what matters," I said, "and to who matters." She didn't press further, just nodded, quietly, like she understood more than words could ever say. From that night on, my recovery had a different kind of energy. It wasn't just about healing my body anymore. It was about reclaiming the dignity that had been quietly eroded, not by illness, but by disappointment. I stopped waiting for Claire to call. I stopped checking the phone with that familiar sting in my chest, hoping for a voice that wasn't coming. Instead, I started filling my days with what fed me. Conversations with Anna, gentle walks, small moments of beauty I had ignored for years. The way the morning light caught the leaves, the smell of rain on warm concrete, the quiet sound of a house settling at night. My body grew stronger, but so did something else, a quiet certainty that I no longer needed to beg anyone to see me. And with every quiet morning, every thoughtful gesture from a neighbor who owed me nothing, the gap between what I had expected from Claire and what I had been given by Anna turned from pain into proof. Proof that love is a choice, and that sometimes the family we deserve isn't the one we're born into. It's the one who shows up when the world turns cold. And soon, very soon, that proof would no longer just live quietly in my heart. It would be written, signed, and sealed. And when the time came for it to be read, no one, not even Claire, would be able to pretend they didn't know exactly why. Time moved quietly after that. Summer came, soft and warm. The garden that I had neglected began to bloom again, thanks to Anna's careful hands. My kitchen smelled like fresh bread more days than not. I had energy again, enough to water the flowers, to dust the shelves, to breathe without effort. The storm had passed, but the silence between my daughter and me had grown so wide, it no longer felt like silence. It felt like distance, measurable, permanent. Once in a while, Claire would send a message. Short, polite, busy week. Hope you're good, or can't talk now. Maybe next week. Not cruel, not angry, just absent. And I learned to stop waiting for warmth from a well that had long run dry. The papers were drawn up quietly without fuss. My lawyer came by one evening with a folder, a pen, and a solemn expression. We sat at the same kitchen table where Anna had once placed her soups, her bread, her quiet kindness. I read every word, every clause. It was not complicated. Everything I owned, the house, the savings, the heirlooms, the stocks my late husband had worked a lifetime for, all of it, in clear, simple language, went to Anna. I signed, slowly, without shaking. The lawyer looked at me for a long moment, like he wanted to say something, but instead he just nodded. He slid the papers into his case, and with that, my decision was no longer just an idea. It was the truth, written, witnessed, and legal. Days passed, weeks even. And then, one Sunday out of nowhere, Claire called. The sound of her name on the phone made my heart skip. "Mom," she said, voice quick, distracted. "I heard you weren't well. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I smiled into the quiet, a small, tired smile only I could feel. "I did tell you, Claire." There was a pause. "Well, I didn't realize it was serious." "It was," I said softly. Another pause. A longer one. Are you okay now?" "I'm stronger," I said. She exhaled. Maybe relief, maybe guilt, maybe both. "Good. I've just been swamped with work. You know how it is." "I know," I said. "I know very well." She talked for a few more minutes, filling the space with stories about deadlines, colleagues, weekend plans that didn't include me. I listened, not with anger, not even with sadness, just with the clear, steady understanding of a woman who has finally stopped begging to be chosen. A week later, I asked her to come by. She arrived in a car that cost more than my house once did. She wore shoes that looked like they'd never touched grass. She kissed my cheek, lightly, as though our last real conversation had been warm instead of hollow. "The place looks good," she said, glancing around, polite but distracted, her eyes already scanning for the clock, the next appointment, the next thing that mattered more than this. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one, always the same table, and I poured her tea. She didn't drink it, just held the cup, warming her hands on something she had no intention of tasting. "There's something we should talk about," I said. That made her look up. "What's wrong? Is it your health again?" "No," I said, calm, steady. "It's about the future." She leaned back, maybe relieved, maybe just impatient. "Okay. I've been making arrangements," I said. "Quiet ones. Necessary ones." "Arrangements?" "For when I'm gone." Her posture shifted. Not quite alarmed, but suddenly, for the first time in a long time, fully paying attention. "Mom, you don't need to worry about that. You'll live a long time." I smiled faintly. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, it's done. "What's done?" I looked at her, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the calm of someone who has already walked through the fire and come out the other side. "Everything I own," I said softly, "is going to someone who was here when I needed her." For the first time, the color drained from her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice small, thin, like a string pulled too tight. "I mean," I said gently, "that the house, the accounts, your father's investments, every heirloom, they're no longer in your name. They haven't been for weeks." Silence. Heavy, cold, the kind that fills a room like water. Mom, you can't be serious. I am, I said. And I didn't make the choice in anger. I made it in truth. Her eyes darted, searching, maybe for a way to charm me, maybe for a loophole she could crawl through. You're my daughter, she said finally, like it was a shield. And you were my daughter, I said softly, even when you chose to disappear. She leaned forward, desperate now. I was busy. I had work, my own life. I know, I said, calm, gentle, final. You told me. You had your own life, and I respected that. But understand this. The people we build our lives around are the people who show up, not the ones who explain why they couldn't. Her hands trembled around the untouched tea. For the first time, she looked young again, not polished, not powerful, just a little girl realizing too late that some doors once closed do not open the same way again. She sat there for a long time, silent, maybe hoping I'd undo it all in a rush of forgiveness. But I had forgiven her already. That's why I could speak so calmly. Forgiveness is not the same as restoration, and trust, once abandoned, does not rebuild itself out of empty calls and late apologies. Finally, she stood, quiet, eyes glassy but proud. I guess there's nothing left to say, she whispered. There's one thing, I said softly. Live the life you chose, fully, without regret. That's all I ask. She nodded, a tiny, broken nod, and walked out the door. I listened to her footsteps fade, to the car door close, to the engine start, and then the house was still. Anna came by later that evening, carrying a basket of fresh rolls, humming softly to herself. She found me sitting at the table, hands folded, eyes calm. Rough day? She asked, noticing the traces of tears still drying on my face. Necessary day, I said. She sat down across from me, warm and steady as always. Whatever it was, you're not alone. I smiled, not the tired, hollow smile of survival, but the quiet, peaceful smile of someone who has finally, fully taken her life back. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Not because I had taken anything from Claire, but because I had finally given something. My trust, my gratitude, my legacy, to someone who had earned it. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it signs a few papers, closes a door, and lets silence do the rest. The days that followed felt different. Not louder, not even happier. Just still. Like a storm had passed, and the air, though heavy, was clean. I found myself moving through my home as though it were both a museum and a sanctuary. Each room filled with pieces of my life, some painful, some tender, all finally at peace. Sometimes I'd pause in the hallway, my fingers brushing against the frames of old photographs. Claire's first day of school, her birthday parties, the smile she used to give me when she still believed that mothers could fix anything. I didn't cry anymore when I looked at them. I didn't ache the way I used to. Instead, I felt something quiet, like gratitude that I had been able to love her at all, even if she hadn't known how to love me back when I needed it. You see, time has a way of sanding down the sharp edges of grief. What feels like a wound at first eventually becomes a scar. Still there, still part of you, but no longer raw. And in that soft healing, I realized something important. My story wasn't a tragedy. Not really. It was a turning. Life had turned me towards someone who saw me when I was invisible, who listened when silence was all I could manage, who held space for me not out of duty, but out of care. That kind of love, unexpected, undeserved, unasked for, is the kind that rewrites everything. And so I stopped asking why Claire couldn't give it. I started giving thanks that Anna did. My world got smaller, yes, but it also got kinder, quieter, and, in a way I hadn't felt in years, safe. I tell you this now because maybe, just maybe, you've carried the same kind of weight. Maybe someone you trusted left you in the cold. Maybe someone you gave everything to couldn't be bothered to lift a finger when it mattered most. If that's you, please hear me. You are allowed to grieve them, but you are also allowed to move forward without them. You are allowed to stop watering the soil that no longer grows anything. Find the places where love is alive, even if they surprise you, especially if they surprise you. Sometimes family is chosen. Sometimes kindness arrives in the shape of a neighbor with warm soup and a soft voice. And sometimes the people you least expect become the ones who remind you you're still worth caring for. Before I finish tonight, may I ask, gently, humbly, if this story touched you, will you subscribe? It helps keep these stories alive. It encourages me deeply, and more than anything, it tells me that somewhere out there, someone's heart was listening. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. You never know. Your words might be the very thing that lifts someone else out of a quiet despair. We are all just trying to love and be loved in a world that sometimes forgets how. And if sharing this reminds even one person to show up for someone they care about, then maybe, just maybe, this pain wasn't wasted at all. Seasons have passed since that conversation with Claire. The house feels lighter now, not because things have changed physically, but because I no longer carry the invisible weight of waiting for someone who has already chosen to stay away. Anna still comes by. Sometimes it's for tea, sometimes to bring fresh bread from her bakery, sometimes just to sit beside me on the porch as we watch the sun melt into the horizon in a sky the color of old peaches and gold. We don't talk much about what happened anymore. We don't need to. Some truths don't require repeating. They simply become part of the quiet agreement between two people who've been through their own storms. I've learned to laugh again. Not the polite laugh you offer strangers, not the soft chuckle you give out of habit, but the real kind. The kind that starts low, honest, and rolls out like music you forgot you knew the tune to. And sometimes when the laughter fades, I catch Anna looking at me, her eyes warm as though she's quietly proud that she's watched me crawl out of a darkness I never asked for and find my way back to light. As for Claire, I hear from her occasionally. A text on my birthday, a forwarded photograph from her travels, little gestures, not hateful, not loving, just distant echoes from a life we no longer truly share. I answer politely. I wish her well, and that's it. No bitterness, just boundaries, finally honored. If there's anything I want you to take from this, it's this. Healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes healing is simply accepting what is, without needing to rewrite what was. It's allowing yourself to let go, not because they deserve your forgiveness, but because you deserve your freedom. Life will surprise you. It will break you in ways you didn't see coming. And then, if you let it will send someone, or something, to help stitch you back together. Pay attention when that moment comes. Don't dismiss it because it doesn't look the way you imagined. Love rarely does. And when you find it, in a neighbor, in a friend, in a quiet kindness you weren't expecting, hold it. Nurture it. Let it remind you that the world is still good, even when people aren't. My story isn't about revenge. Not really. It's about justice, yes. But more than that, it's about choice. The choice to stop chasing those who run. The choice to give love to those who show up. The choice to leave behind a world that's better, softer, truer than the one you were handed. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. From the deepest part of me. You didn't just listen to a story tonight, you carried it with me. And that, my dear listener, is a gift I will never take lightly. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. It's such a simple thing, but it helps this channel breathe. It helps these stories travel to people who need them. And it tells me, in this big, busy, often lonely world, that we found each other for a reason. Take care tonight, take care tomorrow, and remember, the world will not always be kind, but kindness, once given, is never wasted. Good night.